Okay, so big news coming out of Germany. Their domestic intelligence agency has basically dropped the hammer on the AfD, the Alternative for Germany party.
Yeah, they've officially classified them as a proven right-wing extremist organization. That's a heavy label.
It really is. And we're not talking about some tiny fringe group here. This is a party with, what, over 150 seats in parliament, polling over 20%?
Exactly. They have significant nationwide representation, and apparently this is the first time in modern German history a party with that kind of federal presence gets hit with this designation.
So what's the proven part based on it? It's not just political name calling.
Well, according to the reports, it comes after a pretty long investigation, like 3 years long.
3 years.
Culminating in this massive 1,000-page report, basically laying out the case for why the agency believes the AfD violates core constitutional principles.
1,000 pages. Okay,
Yeah.
so they've got receipts, supposedly, and what kind of things are we talking about?
Well, the sources mention things like AfD leaders apparently repeating actual Nazi slogans, which is, a pretty bright red line in Germany for obvious reasons.
Yeah, you'd think. What else?
And also threats, or maybe more like discussions, about deporting German citizens if they don't have the right kind of ethnic German heritage.
Wow. Deporting citizens based on ethnicity. Okay, so how is this going down internationally? Or maybe more specifically, with certain figures in the U.S.?
Predictably, it's caused a bit of a stir. You saw Marco Rubio's reaction?
Oh, yeah. He wasn't happy.
Mhm.
Went on X, formerly Twitter, right?
Yeah.
What did he call it? A temper tantrum?
Something like that. He accused Germany of giving its spy agency powers to surveil the opposition, framed it as tyranny in disguise.
His argument seemed to be, well, the AfD is popular. They came second in recent elections, he pointed out, so therefore calling them extremist is wrong.
Right. He flipped it, saying the real extremism was the establishment's deadly open border immigration policies.
So the party echoing Nazi slogans isn't the problem. It's the immigration policy. That's a take.
It definitely sidesteps the actual content of the AfD's platform and rhetoric that the German agency focused on. It shifts the blame entirely.
And he's not the only one, right? Didn't Elon Musk chime in?
Oh, absolutely. Musk actually attended an AfD campaign event. Virtually, I think. He claimed banning the centrist AfD.
Centrist? Seriously?
His word, not mine. He called banning them an extreme attack on democracy. He's also posted before saying things like, only the AfD can save Germany.
Wasn't there also something a while back about him and a gesture at an inauguration parade that looked familiar?
Yeah, that incident definitely raised eyebrows, and people have drawn connections, rightly or wrongly, between that and his parent support for parties like the AfD. It feeds into a certain narrative.
And then there's J.D. Vance. He jumped in too.
He did. He shared Rubio's post, adding his own commentary. He criticized European leaders for isolating these far-right parties.
What was his line? Something about the AfD being the most popular party and representing East Germany?
Yeah, he said it's the most popular party in Germany, and by far the most representative of East Germany. Then accused bureaucrats of trying to destroy it.
And didn't he compare it to rebuilding the Berlin Wall? That seems a little much.
It's certainly a dramatic comparison. Again, like Rubio, it focuses on the popularity and the perceived establishment opposition rather than the substance of the extremist classification itself.
Right. And let's get back to that substance, because the German report, this 1,000-page document, supposedly details some pretty specific stuff.
Exactly. Things like Alexander Gallen's comment, trivializing the Holocaust, calling the Nazi era a speck of bird poop in German history.
I remember that. Just incredibly offensive.
And reviving those Nazi slogans we mentioned, condemning foreigners in general terms. There was even one AfD member quoted as saying, the SS weren't criminals.
The SS weren't. Okay. It's hard to argue that's mainstream political discourse.
No, and you also have figures like Alice Weidel, one of the party leaders, using inflammatory language, like calling Muslims headscarf-wearing girls and knife-wielding men on welfare.
Just blatant dehumanization. It paints a pretty clear picture of why the agency might reach that conclusion.
It does. It moves beyond policy disagreements into what the agency clearly sees as attacks on human dignity and democratic principles.
So here's the really interesting part, maybe. Despite the AfD having, like, a quarter of the electorate supporting them in some polls.
Yeah, significant support.
There's actual talk in Germany about potentially banning the party altogether.
That's the tightrope, isn't it? How does a democracy deal with a party that's gained significant popular support but is deemed fundamentally anti-democratic or extremist by its own institutions?
It's a huge question. Banning a party with that much voter backing feels, I don't know, inherently risky in a democracy.
It is. It's a measure with a very high bar in
Oh.
Germany, precisely because of their history. But the fact that it's even being seriously discussed shows how gravely they view the situation.
And you have figures like Trump, who invited Weidel to his inauguration.
Right.
Right. So there's this international dimension, too.
For sure. These groups often find validation and support from like-minded figures across borders. It reinforces their legitimacy in the eyes of their supporters.
So it really boils down to this clash, doesn't it? Is labeling a popular party extremist a necessary defense of democracy's core values?
Or is it, as Rubio and Vance and Musk argue, a way to silence opposition you don't like, a suppression of dissent?
And the fact the AfD keeps gaining ground despite all this, it just makes that question even harder to answer.
It really does. It forces a society to confront what its absolute red lines are and what it's willing to do when those lines are crossed, even by a significant portion of the electorate.
So thinking about this, what should people take away? It really makes you consider where the boundaries of acceptable political speech lie in a democracy.
Absolutely. And how do you balance freedom of speech with the need to protect against ideologies that could ultimately undermine that very freedom? There are no easy answers here.
That's all for today's Dissent Picks. If you believe in standing up for what's right, please check out our collections at dissentpicks.com, featuring thought-provoking t-shirts, mugs, stickers, and more that amplify your voice. Stay informed, stand strong, and we'll see you next time.